right, it's the 24th day of the month of August 2018. Good to be alive, isn't it? This is the day that the Lord has made. We shall rejoice and be glad in it. The week is done. It's Friday. And we always look forward to the Media Roundtable. And we want to welcome both our national and international audience watching us online. Thanks for being part of this broadcast. And everyone from Arua, Karamoja, Kisoro, Mbale, wherever, I want to say thank you very much. We get a lot of feedback from you watching. Now, in the next show, we'll be opening up some space for you to contribute to the show because many of you have been asking for that. But hey, my name is Solomon Seranya and welcome to the program. Let me introduce my panelists this morning. I have Simon Kagwanjala. Simon, it's good to have you. It's a bit back.
And so is the hope, I guess.
I hope it is back. It's good to have you on the show, man.
Nice to have you.
All right, we missed you. The whole, no, I think we've
been around.
We've been around. I think we missed Mildred to Haise.
Did your hope go with the memory?
You're fake. You know that. All right, Joseph Sabiti, journalist and man from Zombo. It's good to have you on the show.
Good to see you hopeful again.
I hope I am, because last Friday was a mess.
Hopeless.
Obore Chris, senior journalist, I should say.
Yes.
I love the way you say yes.
Yes.
And also director communications at Parliament. It's good to have you on the show.
Also say you dictated that Roosevelt sits next to you. No, when I wanted that here.
Roosevelt, no public policy lectures.
Unfortunately, you can't live without policy. Public your life. All what you're seeing are dynamics, public policy dynamics.
let's wait to hear how you're going to dissect it. Roosevelt
Yes.
Kagumi also joins us. Rose, let me give you a handshake. Good to have you. I saw you on Al Jazeera. You did absolutely well. And Roosevelt is a senior journalist also, and also blogger, someone who I look to with a lot of respect. Rose, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
And of course, the boss of the Nile Post, Idris Chigundu. Idris, it's good to have you on the show.
It's a pleasure.
Lots of punching this week, yeah, on social media.
Yeah.
As the fight against fake news went on, I saw people punching you east, left, and right. But I'm sure you still have your grips down.
It's part of our trade. It's something we get used to.
part of the game. All right, so let's get the show started, guys. It's been a whole week of.
Was the Orania footage fake?
It was absolutely genuine footage.
Njala.
Okay.
Njala. You forget I host this show.
I have answered that. It was absolutely genuine.
Njala. I host this show. You host the morning brew show. I host the media roundtable.
Why did you want me to clear that? You're right.
We'll come to that.
It was a genuine footage.
All our graphics, the experts in town, in the studio, and we start footage and dissecting.
We'll be dissecting that in just a
yeah.
bit. But guys, welcome once again to the media roundtable. Let's start with the whole events that happened this week. How it all started, the detention of Robert Chagulanyi. Finally, he's aligned in Gulu. And the court-martial says you're a free man. And then 5 or 6 minutes of freedom. He's rearrested, taken to Gulu Magistrates Court, and then eventually detained, but also given permission to see his medical personnel. Then, of course, we know Lanya has been visiting the injured and came up with different reports. The report he gave to the media and also what he tabled on the floor. The committees really split on everything that was going on. We all remember the fracas, but let's get a preamble.
He's also visiting the MPs in Gulu today.
Okay, yes. That's a good one.
So you can be there to witness by yourself.
Okay, so let's start the show with a preamble of our general views and thoughts on what happened, and let's start with Joseph. You've been following the events closely. I saw you yesterday doing the live broadcast here. Okay, so give us your week in perspective on a general.
What do I say? I have seen my country transcend into madness. Officers once held in high esteem, people who are supposed to be responsible for the security of the president and the first family and very important people became in charge of security of boda men in Chiseka and they became custodians of the sticks. They beat anybody they could land their hands on, beat journalists, beat one into hospital, they beat others into pain and things like that. And I sat down and said, wow, because for us, the post-86 generation, they've been telling us the NRM fought against torture, against dictatorship, against indiscipline of the military. And so this weekend, I'll be looking for people who are older than me to tell me what the difference is between what I saw and what the NRM fought against.
And that was actually, it's one of those moments that I remember I've been reading this week. So I remember there's a clip that we played in slow-mo as the guys in uniform were beating people, seriously beating people, and of course including Akena. So all right, let me come to you, Simon.
Nothing new. To be quite honest, beating has now become part of us. What was pleasant to me is seeing journalists reclaiming their position as the most hated. Whenever a journalist comes off as the most hated, that means you're doing your job right. Two, what I also realized was a bit peculiar was the organized beating. Back in the day, you'd assume it was just spontaneous, but this time, you'd imagine they underwent some bit of rehearsal, and the following day, ironically, the spokesperson of the UPDF comes up with a statement promising to reprimand whoever beat up people. How cynical. I think that was mocking us. And the media ought to ask harder questions. One thing I would applaud is a statement from our colleagues from the Kenyan Guild, who came out to condemn the brutality that was meted onto journalists. But we are not living on an island as journalists. If the entire country is being beaten, we shouldn't be spared.
That's harsh.
Why would we be spared if the entire country is being beaten up? Politicians are getting their backs broken every day. As we speak, Zake is on life support. As we speak, Bobi Wine is on crutches. As we speak, Namboze is frail. So these are symbolic of a general picture, of a bigger picture. So it would be foolhardy to imagine that a journalist can sit on the top floor of one of the five-star hotels and feel too comfortable in a messy nation.
All right. And I think it's important because it's important for us to start from there, because the reason why I was asking for a general overview is to build up, and I think we've got that. But Rosebell, like everyone was waiting for Bobi Wine to be taken to court, and there's been the hashtag Free Bobi Wine has been trending online, and people have showed their demonstrations that they need Bobi Wine released. At the peak of it, you know, we've had people burning up tires and the security deploying. You've seen Mambas moving all over the city, and they beat up people against the protests. What do you make of whatever was going on?
I think it was very heartbreaking to see Bobi Wine emerge out of that car, being supported. It really reflects like the state of the nation. If you can beat an elected member of parliament to that point, and to see Zake on life support, then it's a nation on life support, I guess. Because there's no other way you can really find the words to describe such heartbreaking events. This was not some accident. This was a planned attack on the opposition, whose only crime was that they posed a challenge to the NRM in Arua. And this whole talk of stone throwing, they could have found the person. I don't think all these MPs were in one place to throw one stone. You know, so if you tell me 33 people are responsible for throwing a stone on a motorcade, really, that is an ineffective government. And also dropping, kind of transfer droppings, whatever language you want to use it, of those charges to bring Bobi Wine before a civilian court has been under pressure, international pressure, local pressure. We have seen demonstrations in Tokyo, in Amsterdam, in London, in Washington, D.C. This is unprecedented that Museveni is getting such international treatment that he deserves, because his government has been torturing Besigye for the last 15 years, and we have not seen this kind of outrage. So it's important that we have the world on our side, but we also have ourselves on our side. And the torturing of journalists, when you see any situation where a microphone becomes a target of a military, of a regime, that's a regime in panic.
All right, I wanted us to go forward to that later, but I just wanted you to comment on the freedom of expression vis-a-vis you know, what really happened? People demonstrating, people burning tires, showing their, you know, and then the police being deployed to keep law and order. What do you make of it?
I don't think that is new. We have seen it walk to walk. Whenever you have a country which you put a lead on, you don't give people the right to freely express themselves in peaceful manner. Ugandans they are not given a choice. I was part of the Women's March on June 30th. When we were given a choice to actually peacefully march, we did. We did not go anywhere to attack anybody. What we see on the streets is because you have to make the peaceful protest very impossible to happen, because the president and his administration are really, really afraid of that expression. They're afraid that people will show their true colors. And what we see on the streets is people trying to express themselves in such a limited space. But off the streets, we have seen journalists getting threatening phone calls. We have seen people threatened on WhatsApp by random, you know, I would call them ragtag security forces. You know, you cannot be doing that if you're a proper security force. You can't resort to using WhatsApp and threatening violence to journalists, really, off the street and on their phones. Really, journalists have not been safe. And like someone says, journalists cannot be safe if a regime is in panic.
We all need to be beaten according to Njala. But policy-wise, Obore, in terms of public policy and the law.
Be fair to this man.
The last time he was here, he really gave us a good lecture on public policy and law. And that's why maybe we still remember up to that. I just, because I wanted us to build it from the protests to then the events that occurred. And yes, but let's talk about the way people were beaten and also the way the media was attacked. Clearly, you see in the footage that we have, Akena raised his camera up and they continued beating him.
Knelt down and pleaded.
He knelt down and pleaded and they beat him up. We saw people clobbered by the security forces and not even by the police, by the way.
I think this time we need to actually keep the police out of this.
Yes, it was more of a military operation.
Special forces led operation.
On civilians.
Yes.
I just wanted to pick your views and thoughts on that.
I don't think there is anyone that is happy with it, including the army leadership itself. And that's why the army has come out to condemn that. And of course, you're asking again a wrong guy, because the person who was beaten is a personal friend, has been a colleague with me. You don't expect me not to have empathy with James Akena. I personally felt very bad that will happen. And so do other organs have expressed the same. That's why you like calling the policeman. But I prefer looking at what is working underground. What could avoid this? Because that's already occurred. We have seen it on television. It is being replayed. So if I discuss the surface of it, then I'm not making a contribution. So I would want to think that we need to look at the undercurrents. What is underpinning these kind of developments now? And how do we as a country rally ourselves to get out of it without causing further damage? And that's why your policy issues come in. These are just dynamics of public policy. People are fighting for domains of influence. Yeah, you see, when you see the elections bring all these, those are domains of influence in terms of political action. That once you have those centers where you have political influence, the many you have, the more you are able to influence the state agenda. This is the contestation. That's why I told you can't run away from policy, because it's part and parcel of politics and part and parcel of governance. So, but how do we then play these? How do we fight for these zones, domains of influence, without inflicting injury to Akena, including injury to Honorable Bobi Wine, without inflicting injury even to the police? We have seen cases where police previously have also been injured. And for me as a person, I lost one of the friends, Ariong, at that time. And his kids are still talk to them. He was from Atuturu, where I grew up from. So you can see that the problem, we cannot box it to one area. If we do so, we make a mistake. So I would like to submit that we need to come out on how to deal with political disputes. I think we are lacking as a country. That's the biggest problem. We don't know how to settle political disputes. The contestation has been left to the forces that are contesting. And the forces that are contesting, their interest is ultimately the zones, the domains of influence. But then we need the ground rules. And then we need the people who actually champion consensus. It could be outside the contestants. So we need consensus brokers. We need men and women of integrity, of goodwill. We need arbitration of these political disputes. Otherwise, if we keep talking about so and so has been beaten today, it becomes cyclic, because we are not holding the people responsible to understand the implications of what is happening. And as journalists, you also need to understand there is an information gap. The elite in Uganda have exclusive information about what is good, what is wrong, what is this. It is not shared by majority of the population because of the access to this information, because we have not done enough civic consciousness of our own populations. So sometimes it could be government swaying them one side, it could be Njala coming to sway them without them understanding what is motivating Njala to do so. So let us also work hard as journalists to hold every person accountable, hold every actor accountable. He said that journalists are proved to be hated. I agree. Once journalists are tortured, it could be a sign that their work is uncomforting some people. But it should not only be hatred from one side. If you're hated from one side, it could be that you have taken a side. If both contestants hate you, I would prefer that position. But if it is only one side, that means one side could feel that you are not fair to them. So let Njala hate a journalist, so is Solomon. Then the journalist actually is taking a middle ground. But if it is only Solomon hating the journalist, and one contestant is saying, I am happy with them, then there could be a problem of judgment there.
Chris, I think you're trying to make it an equal power contestation. This is not an equal power contestation. If people are equal,
covering an abnormality.
We are covering the incumbency and imposition.
Hold on, guys. And I think this is going to be a very, very interesting debate. But let me bring in, Idris Chigundu. I think that for me, what Chris is saying is that this is just happening. I mean, this has happened before. We've seen old people being beaten up. We've seen history teachers, that's right, journalists have been battered, people have been beaten, opposition has been clobbered. I mean, the call for talking has been on, but it still continues. Is there an equal platform for all of us to speak?
He has been a very good advocate, and we've always laughed at him.
So let me just bring in Idris for your general views on that.
I think what happened to our comrade Akena needs to be condemned in the strongest terms. In Akena's case, if you look critically at the pictures, you can see that he was targeted. There were other journalists around. He was targeted. You see one army officer trying to restrain. There's one army officer who first tries to restrain his colleagues, but others come out and of course, from what I've heard and from what I've heard from within the media fraternity, is that for a long time some of these people have been unhappy with the coverage, with the kind of photos. They know Akena is a known person. He has been in the field long enough. They know him. Some of these photos that have been coming out in the international press and things like that. So what they did, they waited for their moment. And I think at this level, and for me that's why it gets very frightening. We're reaching a point where, journalists don't reaching a point where, journalists don't feel safe. We can't feel safe trying to execute our work. And like I've often said, when you infringe on the freedom of journalists, you have infringed on the freedom of the public to know. Sometimes even members of the public don't make this connection. Sometimes it's shocking to hear a member of the public saying, this journalist also what? The same people come and sit at the reception. The same people telling you how someone is stealing their land, how they need coverage. Because we need to also, as the media, need to impress it upon the general public that once, if our freedoms are infringed upon, even your rights to know, to get access to information, to get a fair hearing, a platform to air your views, will be affected. I know. But I think it has to be condemned. And second, we have to follow through with what the army promised. It's one thing for the army to promise that we are going to charge these people. And it's another to do it. And other things happen in this country, because we are going to move on to the next story. Let the media follow through and see whether those people who harassed Akena, who tortured Akena, are indeed charged. I'm using
Everyone who was beaten.
No, I'm using Akena as an example, because it's one of the things that has really caught our attention. I mean,
I think
you are saying why Kenya. I mean, we are going into another debate, like I'm saying. You get it?
Yeah.
I think it is very important what Idris is talking about. And when we say the media, we're not talking about individual journalists.
Yes.
We have media houses that are run by people, who, the bosses behind the scenes. They have the power to do something. And you cannot let the action be for that person who is being battered by the police,
Guys,
by the military.
And
we need... Simon, I think that it's very important to realize that the assault was consistent right from Arua. TV journalists were beaten while they were doing live coverage, charged with inciting violence for simply talking about what is going on. So this is very, it's very coordinated. It's not something that just came out of nowhere, and we need to address it like that. That said, also I saw very problematic, pictures of journalists being put in the battle line with no protective gear.
Yes.
That should be condemned. Media houses should never spend so little on protecting their journalists, because if you send this person, what if that stray bullet that hit somebody hit a journalist? What would we say? At least let's do the minimum on our part if you're sending journalists out there to have the right protective gear. But of course, the way Akena was beaten and the way we saw people, the people were roughed up, nothing can prepare you for that. So we have to look at both ends. So we have to really condemn this, even when the military actually comes to apologize. This is only because we have been vocal. Let's run to the end and claim accountability to say, where are the officers? Let's not forget, where are they? Let's get to the end of it.
Absolutely. Before you come in, I was talking to some of the journalists who were on the front line on that day of the beating.
Yes.
And they were telling me that the security forces had told them to stay distance. They shouldn't cross the line. This is what I got. And Akena said, no, you can't tell me what to do. I mean, we're all here to work, so let me do my job. So Akena went in front to take more pictures. I think he wanted to get that perfect shot. And so did one of the NBS journalists, if you look at the clip. He goes and then he sees the security people coming, and then he runs back, and somehow they circle Akena and they beat him up. So this brings in the arguments that do we sometimes cross the line, or no, but
when are we safe?
All right.
The next thing you're going to tell me is when you're coming on the morning breeze, make sure you have a helmet on your head.
But when there's a riot,
this is the front line.
When there's a riot, where is the line?
In conflict reporting, because in conflict reporting, you never know when it strikes.
And Solomon, you can't determine.
For starters, you never know when it strikes. Two, unless you're telling us to go into embedded journalism, where we have to be in bed with a certain side that should dictate,
but
please
like
don't take
the
that
side of power. Of course. You don't embed with a weaker
and that
party.
would be awkward. That would be awkward. We are always on the firing line. That is journalism for you.
But let's not forget
go-
the president.
But Solomon,
No, the reason why I brought this up.
I wanted us to have a very sober, and I liked the perspectives brought in by Roosevelt. Exactly my thoughts. One, it shouldn't be up to the security agencies to determine barriers.
Of course, it can't be.
For the work of a journalist.
It can't be, but that's what happened there.
We have, for example, never forced our way into Mboya or into Central Police Station, at least for myself. There are places that are gazetted in the Constitution. And if I cross the line or I do anything contrary to the law, I'm not immune to prosecution. So, and also, let us go back and see, where are the merchants of torture? The people, remember, first it was police saying we are going to take action. I want us to discuss torture as a principle. Whether you're a journalist or a non-journalist, it is something that this nation should not be subscribing to. I took a lot of time trying to find out, where is the police driver who once knocked a supporter of Dr. Besigye? You remember that?
They say he was arraigned in court this week.
The gentleman is back at work at Kira Road Police Station.
I saw reports.
Where are the DPCs who were reprimanded for caning Dr. Besigye's supporters on the streets like cow? Moses Nanoka is DPC in Rukunjiri, if you remember.
Yes.
So this whole window dressing of the security agencies of we are doing something is not going to work this time. We need a public trial of these UPDF officers who clobbered our colleagues, who went out of you know, accepted reasonable force in the law and became custodians of torture, the merchants of torture I'm talking about. There are so many of them in the Uganda police force. They come, they make a public apology, we get excited, they are recycled back into the command structure of the police, and that I think is very wrong. The second front is, for example, I was embarrassed that the first condemnation came from the Kenya Editors Guild. Do we have editors in this country? Do we have newsroom managers in this country?
Do you have journalism associations?
Forget, before I even go to the journalism associations, before I get there, these are your staff, the people who work for you, the people who actually help you keep your job. And up to now, I have not even seen an individual editor of a media house issuing a statement to the effect that they condemn. It had to be the Kenya Editors Guild. That's how low we have sunk in the management of our newsroom affairs. 3, the associations of the journalists. You know, we've been talking about this and everything. Do you know what happens? The most number of spies, ISO, CMI, UPDF, are in the newsrooms. So before we even, that's why Obore says we need to, when we say Akena was beaten, we're going to spend a lot of time discussing how he was beaten, when he was beaten. But there are deep underlying issues. We are our biggest enemies. The newsrooms are bugged, absolutely. It doesn't matter which newsroom you're talking about. And then so before we even discuss those issues, we have a lot of cleaning, in-house cleaning to do. But also, you're a media house. You're sending somebody to cover. If you're a news manager and you read trends, you read events. For example, you could predict that Monday, Monday was going to be a messy day. You send out your journalists, not even the slightest basic protective gear. You send them to the front line. And you see, these are journalists who are struggling to make ends meet, and they're not going to say no. So they go there. But there's one important thing I would want my colleagues to pay attention to. Personal safety. You're already not safe in the hands of a security agencies that are targeting you, that want to make sure that evidence is covered as they unleash terror on other Ugandans. And so they're just basic things. Let them come for you. Not in the middle of, you can't get yourself in the middle of these guys. You're already marked. You're already targeted for beating and everything. Let me give you 2 clear examples and I conclude. During the coverage of Arua, the Bobi Wine saga, if you read trends and everything, you could see the security agencies were up to unleash terror on politicians. And there are zones within Pacific Hotel, for example, that it was definitely high risk to get yourself there. Do we have these conversations in newsrooms about conflict reporting? Because I saw my colleague journalist right next to that tundra, which had the dead body, and I saw plainclothes police, special forces guys, single file, entering Pacific Hotel. Those guys were not going to have tea. You get it? And so you get yourself right in the middle of
you
that
want that
operation.
perfect shot.
Yeah, sometimes it's inevitable.
You can't get a perfect shot in the middle of an operation.
You're motivated by the desire of a good story.
We all want that story. I want it more than many of the journalists. But you're going to get your head broken. And the media house, up to now, it is the Kenya Editors Guild that has issued.
Up to now.
Up to now.
And that's, I think, let's bring in Chris here. Chris, we're discussing 2 things here. One is the aspect of torture. We cannot run away from this. Yes, we are talking about our rights as journalists, but we also saw people being clobbered, as in real being beaten. The military even has magalo. What are those things? Pliers.
Yes.
They take it through and they literally want to squeeze a life out of you.
Even when you're helping.
And these issues, I don't think you're very proud, first of all, you as Chris.
And they are not in the policy.
And they are not even in policy. so let's talk about that, but also the aspect of our rights as journalists and the need for us to be protected.
And our responsibility.
And our responsibility.
Yes.
Again, I will tell you that, comrades, we need to break the cycle in this country. Unfortunately, we don't seem to always agree on the common ground. Because if you talk about torture, there is an anti-torture act passed by Parliament. All of you are aware of that. Yes. And the torture has not started today. Political historians in Uganda tell you, post-independence, we have gone through this. That I told you, let it not become cyclic. So why is it becoming cyclic is my concern.
Yes.
But many people, their concern is what they are seeing. You must think of, you must understand yesterday, see what today is, and possibly try to influence what tomorrow should be. Unfortunately, most of us have gotten into the mood of running with the event as it is. There is politics, Simon, of mobilization, which I think every Ugandan now is very much immersed in politics of mobilization. Some have called it activism. Mobilize, rally support to get influence and run state. Then there's politics after mobilization of running the state. That's why I'm saying we need to get people who may be gifted in mobilization, but those also who can run state affairs away from mobilization. Mobilization is about sloganeering. Yeah. But after that, there is actually addressing the issues we are raising now. That's why I asked us, I've said here, who are the leadership champions? In all sectors, he talks about newsrooms. There is inadequacy of leadership in the newsrooms. That's what all of us are agreeing here. Why? Because we are obsessed with mobilization. Everybody is an activist. It's okay. Activists are very important because they bring these issues to the fore. But then there should be people who analyze these issues, fine-tune them, translate them into good leadership products, and it leads to aspects we want: anti-torture, development. We are inadequately equipped in that area, and that's why this talk is happening. So if we do not sit down and have people who analyze the situations and detach themselves from the craze of mobilization, of being seen, I go to a television, I feel happy, I go and sleep. But there's somebody who should be picking these issues from the television, translate them into policy issues, policy that then impact on the lives of people. That's what I'm telling you. So, but what we need to discourage as a country, let's set the ground rules. Because if we don't have leadership, nothing will be spared. Families tomorrow will also have no leaders. Because they're going to have guys who are high, buy you chips and chicken, finish after that. Hey, but there is a child, there is sickness. I'm not interested. Because because we're not grooming. Solomon, if everyone tries to get everything they want, whenever they want it, chaos, that society will be full of conflict.
But we have ground rules already.
All right,
please, laws protect common interests and work for the good of the country. The moment those laws must have an attendant national culture. We don't have. Here, when you disagree with the Roosevelt, no room for talking.
You can't attend her wedding. You can't
attend her wedding. You are this. You are that. You are this. If you're in opposition, those are pingamizi. If you're in the government, those are eaters.
What about those who are both?
When are you going to have people who say, we are citizens and we deserve this? This is what I talked about, consensus brokerage. Where are they? Let them stand up now. But not telling us, oh, you see, Aken has been beaten. I read my university research on media in Uganda was the political history of the media in Uganda. But Tabaire supervised it. Torture began from those of Kintu. Long media torture. So we are talking about now.
But should which media houses were there?
But should the Catholic media houses were there?
In the Chintu days?
No.
We are running a risk of being, put into
the former prime minister.
The very thing we are trying to talk about.
Patriarch. We are talking about the former prime minister. They ran newspapers. There was Muno. There was what? All these were there, and we have seen journalists the trend during that research during the, I think it was about a 2. There is even a journalist who was killed. So what we are saying, this torture is condemnable. Even children know it is bad. But talking about how bad it is does not help Uganda.
I think we are reacting to an event.
All right, so we're going to take a short break, but we return with much more after the break. Stay with us. Well, 16 minutes after 8 o'clock, you're watching the Media Roundtable from the Political Command Center here at NBS Television. and we are discussing stories that made headlines, giving you some sort of analysis and context to the stories that were big in the week. Let's go to Gulu, ladies and gentlemen. The court martial tells Bobi Wine you're a free man. The DPP advised that you cannot try Bobi Wine in the court martial. Let him go to the civilian court.
And the president's convoy was in the background.
And the president's convoy was going to the military barracks. Unfortunately, the court martial is in the precincts of the military barracks, so you could easily mistake him going to court. But yes, he was there. But let's talk about the whole, you know, the decision by the military court martial. And Joseph, what is your general thought and analysis on the court martial's decision to free Bobi Wine amidst the guns that were presented as evidence and all that?
You see, I think that's when it's important to discuss the principles. Do we want a country where tomorrow, if they find a knife Njala uses to cut his pineapples in his car, he's taken to the court martial? Do we want a country where everything is militarized, that even the ordinary duties of security, law enforcement are now in the hands of the Special Forces Command, the elite force that in our earlier years we knew was responsible for the president's security? And so my strong conviction is that Bobi Wine, Honorable, shouldn't have been tried before the court martial in the first place. I thought it was more decent. I don't know why I think it should have been the civilian courts trying him. We can discuss the merits and demerits of the case. If it were at the High Court, maybe. What is worrying is that we have a rich history of political framing. If you start mentioning it, it's just the perpetrators that change. This time, it is Don Nabasa who is in charge of the operations. Before that, it was Kaihura. He framed so many people, treason, rape, whatever you can call it. Before that, it was Mayombo. May his soul rest in peace. Before that, it was Sejusa, who is now on the run himself. He frog marched the honorables, Omara Tubo, Adimola, Michael Chula. Before that, there was another commander framing the Honorable Regan Okumu for treason, if you remember. So we have a rich history. Even General Moses Ali, when he was reading the statement in Parliament, I smiled because he was charged with treason as well.
I loved the emphasis. This is
the government statement. This is what was given to me.
It took Gaddafi's intervention.
It took Gaddafi's intervention to actually to free General Moses Ali. And so we have enough history to learn from. And I think we are at a level where, you see, Obori was talking about finding leaders and everything. But I think we are going to have to discuss the referee in this mediation process. That the man has already written and said, I was attacked by Bobi Wine and Cassiano. What do you expect a subordinate officer to say when sitting in court? That you're innocent? So I have a lot of issues with civilians being tried before the court martial as a matter of principle. But also,
government said they found guns.
So what happened to the guns?
Exactly, that's the question.
That's the whole point.
They found guns, they found phones, they found rounds of ammunition.
What happened to the guns? Let me give you this information. For example, we know that right now about 5 officers are either facing arrest or dismissal or whatever, or intimidation from the force, from the police force, because they refused to sign a backdated search warrant.
Exactly.
Incriminating the Honorable Chagulanyi. There was a process, an attempt to have a backdated search warrant signed to say that we searched the premises and found guns. And so they first acted, and then now they are thinking later.
Backwards.
Yeah, they are thinking backwards. And so we are in this kind of situation where the referee is saying, I am here to stay, right?
The convoy was hit.
My convoy was hit by Bobi Wine and Chagulanyi, and we believe that a subordinate officer a subordinate court to the command of this person will conduct a very fair hearing, and all these things we're talking about. I don't even want to go into discussing the merits and the demerits of the court of the case before the civilian courts. At least that's a bit of decency. But tomorrow Rosebell will say, Mr. President, you're a dictator, which she says a lot. And the next thing, there's a knife found in her car for cutting a pineapple. And they say we have discovered dangerous weapons. And you go to the court martial. Two,
although not to disturb you so much.
Yes.
Although you're right, it can degenerate to that. But we have also had situations where we have called the president all sorts of things and we have gone home. So either situations can exist. So it depends on why this one comes.
But that's not
Well,
the point.
it is at the convenience of your man. It depends on how annoyed. No, it depends on how annoyed he is with you. That's my worry.
Actually, there are times we have caricatured him more.
I think Joseph is trying to bring a very important point here.
It goes back to abuse of systems, abuse of systems, abuse of processes, and it is more likely to be abused in an institution directly under the control of an individual. I am not saying if I call the president a bad name not allowed in law, I shouldn't be taken on. But you're not going to pick everybody and take to the court martial. And the processes before, for example, General Kale they flew a chopper to Kashagama. The General Mbadi was there. They picked him, brought him to March India. No scratch, right? Abdallah Chitata, whom we all have our problems with. Come on.
That's what we are told anyway.
So they picked him very well, brought him to March India. At least I saw the single file that brought out the Honorable Francis Zake. I saw that. I have the pictures of those men. Actually, people have been asking who tortured Honorable Francis Zake. That the single file you've seen on TV, the men in plain clothes, in rare, flashing double pistols on their waist who entered Pacific Hotel. Those are the guys who brought out the Honorable Francis Zake, screaming that these people are killing me. Journalists save me. He reached the point of even appealing to journalists to save him. So the processes that lead to this military actions and everything. Bobi Wine, by the way, for the first time, he went into the hands of police yesterday. Was picked by the special forces, beaten by the special forces, taken into military barracks, taken to Bondo by the UPDF, flown to wherever they want to take him by the UPDF. The rules of whether who will see him, who will not, actually not even the general UPDF, special forces, who will see him, who will not see him. They determined when the wife will see him, they determined how many lawyers can see him, when they can see him, but when the doctor can see him. Those are not things you want to encourage in a free and democratic society.
I think Joseph is really bringing up a very important aspect of this conversation, the role of President Museveni.
Yes.
In this, he's central to this. When he has become an incessant blogger, he's fatiguing the country with all sorts of messages, disconnected, incomprehensible. When you read, you feel sorry for the man, because a whole president descending like that, talking to the nation every day, not even rethinking, what did I say yesterday? I don't think he thinks through all this, because when you look at, he has gone on a disinformation campaign, really, and calling media houses fake news, like Trump does every day. Really, we are in a very dangerous corner when you have a president who is talking to the nation through a blog every day. I don't think that you should descend a nation to that. And his role and his use of special forces who are close to him, we know the composition of the special forces, and we know what it means when he sends you the special forces. When he writes that, oh, they dropped me with a helicopter and they went back to protect the Wananchi. And the news that we have is the massive torture that we are seeing and people in jails. So which kind of Wananchi did he send the SFC to save? And he's increasingly lying about the fact that there were some women and, using women. It's really disgusting. You can't use women in this, trying to say that women were at, their lives were at stake. When actually we have people on life support, you have tortured people, you send people to torture, and you are embarking on this disinformation campaign of a nation, very detached. When a member, the speaker, deputy speaker of parliament, visits a very tortured people and says this should never have happened, when all sections of society are crying and calling out, but then the president is adamant, we are in a very terrible time.
Solomon, just my slight disagreement with Roosevelt, though, I think I would defend Jaja's right to express himself to the minute. I think actually, based on the situation we are seeing, for me it helps me understand the president's mind, what exactly is going through his mind, and so I would defend his right to write.
Joseph, I am not, by saying that, I'm not saying he can't express himself. I'm linking the issue of lack of institutions. We have people we pay to communicate on behalf of this government. We have not seen much out of that. The president is busy every day.
I actually concur with you. The supremacy of the president's statement is now being diluted.
Exactly.
But
on a daily,
I'm diverting, guys. I just wanted to come back because
yes,
we'll get into the president's discussion.
The important thing is, I was saying, is the central role of the institution of the president. I don't even want to. Okay,
Which
it doesn't.
which has always been central in the last 32
in the
years.
last 32
Exactly.
so many years in the operations of our judicial system. That's the point. The point I'm making.
Solomon.
Two, I wanted just to give this for example. We saw, for example, the debate in Boris, the House of Boris speaks for, and we saw the committee that was constituted by the Right Honourable Speaker. Do you know how that committee was treated in Gulu, for example? That an institution of the state sends observers to go to a court and see what is happening to its members. How many members of that committee access the court martial in
Okay,
Gulu?
Joseph, we'll get to the ad hoc committee a little bit. It looks like you're all getting off where I was trying to get to.
Yes.
But let me bring Simon Kagwanja. Let's go back to the Gulu court martial, because I think there's a lot of unanswered questions that we need to bring out. The decision by the court martial to free Bobi Wine against the evidence that was presented before the media.
Actually, it took me back to...
Do you think we had the influence of the president in this issue, the invisible hand that you're talking about?
Absolutely, absolutely. And luckily, the invisible hand finally became visible. But what is very fundamental here is the predictability of institutions of late. Institutions have been reduced into political secretariats. Institutions that would be dispensing justice have now become secretariats that they act on the whims of the principal. It is very easy today. You would predict. When I just started my career, back in the day, that was 1998, we had a minister. Sorry, I'll get a little bit personal. We had a minister.
No, that's fine.
Former Minister of State for Gender, Kuka, Jane Francis Kuka.
Yes.
Whenever they sent you to a function where Kuka was, you'd only go for a soundbite. You'd leave newsroom with a written script. You'd know what she was going to say. She always repeated herself through and through. So all you waited for is maybe a soundbite with a different background. Maybe there will be some music playing in the background. So some scenario is playing out here. The court martial, unfortunately, the court martial that would have been handling grave cases is now being used for political expedience. And if this trend continues this way, no wonder it's always constituted at critical moments when there is a political dispute of some nature, or when the president falls out with one of his generals. You remember how Guti's term was renewed. You remember the circumstances. Kayihura had just been taken to Machi.
But I mean, he was entitled to be renewed.
Yes, it was. It was.
The
But
president has renewed.
what is now the relevance of the court martial?
Okay, Njala, let me come to you shortly, but let me get to you.
I think I've
Idris.
spoken less.
Three things. I'm giving you the time. Three things.
I
One,
want to put this.
guns were lined before
Yeah,
the press.
It's your turn.
Yeah.
The New Vision published it as one of its big stories.
Yes.
There were, I don't know how many, there was an AK-47 rounds of
Live
ammunition,
ammunition.
15 phones, according to the story. And it was evidence that the state had, that they found in Bobi Wine's room, which was evidence enough for him to be tried in the court martial.
Let me tell you. Let me put this entire thing into perspective. If you have been a journalist long enough, the court martial works is under the thumb. The current chairman of the court martial was himself once tried. People forget, Andrew Guti. Andrew Guti had his charges mysteriously dropped, and then he was appointed MP to replace Tumukunde, who had now just been locked up here. Now the circumstances under Andrew Guti was charged together with that group of the late Kazinis. You know, the creation of army ghosts and everything. Mysteriously along the way, Andrew Guti, Nakibas, Brigadier Nakibas Nakara, their charges were dropped.
And they disappeared.
And within no time, the Guti who at that time had appeared to be in the bad books with the president, had been made army MP, appointed by the, what do they call it? Is it the army council that sits?
Yeah.
To replace Tumukunde, who had been plucked out of parliament after his comments about the president and after being incarcerated here at the thing. His tone changed. So you have the same Guti, you have the same Guti now presiding over the same court. For all intents and purposes, Guti is not under any, I mean, like, he's not acting independently. We don't even need to beat about that bush. It's not Guti who sat, you know, when they're drawing up those, you want to tell me that Guti just realized the other day that But when you look at these charges, no, they should be in the civil court.
10 days later.
There's a communication that comes from somewhere. So in that respect, I sympathize with him. I know for a fact, even when General Eli Tumwine was the chairperson of that court, it was the same. The army court is subordinate to the president. So it's the president who determines which charges they're going to charge Chigundu if he goes there, or Seranja. It's the president who says now drop the charges. Kazini here was on the verge of being, Tumukunde was on the verge of being sentenced for, I think one of the disobeying the commander in chief, doing some of those things were going to attract very heavy sentences. But when a group of these people went to and met Museveni, and of course, when Museveni deemed that this man could be politically useful to him, the president said, okay, they dismissed some charges.
So in your
I think the trend of where the president has played is not new, and we shouldn't even be shocked by the turn of events in Gulu. It's the president, and actually, what we should be thinking about what card is he going to play next?
Okay,
what card is he going to play next?
Before we go for a break, I just want to bring in Chris Obore, who wasn't
Policy
spoken. Someone who gives us some context and policy issues. Chris, the military court martial. My biggest question to all of us that we've been asking is: you go break into people's rooms, you say you found guns, and you had guns, bullets, phones, basically all that, and you also covered security, by the way. I know you did. Extensively. Very interesting stories, blockbuster stories that shaped the narrative of this country. Eventually, the cases are dropped. No one is asking where the guns were. No one is doing nothing. What do you make of the court martial's decision to drop the charges or to transfer the case?
You see, has a person championing the idea of brokering consensus. And whenever I've gone, I am very serious about it, because I have critiqued, we have seen, the cycle continues. So if I do not want to go that route. One, Solomon, I do not have the information that the military has or the police has, whether true or false or what, I do not have. And we must also acknowledge that most times our actions and what we say is influenced by how much information we have and from who. So if we just continue that way, it will be a problem. In the absence of knowledge of what the military has, and without evidence, I have no right to speak.
There's a story that was published by a government newspaper.
What then remains?
There is that information.
What then remains is the only point of hope is what the courts will tell us. Because that's an institution that arbitrates. Why do I say that, Solomon? Politics, most of us think politics is what is played out in the open. Politics takes place back door. And most of us are not in those back door meetings where these things are cooked. We are the consumers of what's agreed to be brought to us.
Chris,
I do not want to make decisions based on that.
I just wanted to interject a little bit, if you can allow me.
Yes.
You have civilians who are found with guns. Yeah? Aligned before the press. They are guns, they are rounds of ammunition. A government newspaper does a story with pictures. Incriminating, saying they found these guns in Pacific Hotel. Court martial dismisses that. It worries me that government and the security forces can find guns in the hands of private people, and nothing is done is done with it, and just drops the charges. But it just worries me. So no, hold on, because it's Chris's time.
Yeah,
I just wanted you to help me understand that.
Yeah, but Solomon,
because you're saying that there is no evidence and all
Solomon,
that.
Let me help you.
All of us.
Let me help Chris, if Chris could allow me to give me a minute. Solomon, it's like you haven't lived long enough in this country. They can even go and find a gun in your ceiling right now.
If
they wanted, they can find bullets. I mean, let's also not be so naive.
You would actually be having a bullet.
No. Platform, but let's also not be so naive to know that, because some of the things we have seen them in this country, they can go and plant bullets in my compound, and the army can come and say, Chigundu, you engaged in subversive activities. Let's check. Before you know it, they have found 2 pistols there, bullets there, and yet you get it. So those display of guns and everything can happen.
It is a very big point.
But it has happened before. It has happened before.
No, I'm just saying. The reason why I'm saying this.
For no reason.
The reason why I'm saying this, you find guns in the hands of private citizens.
You plant guns.
Okay, I don't know if it's planted, but what I know for sure as these guns.
Let me help you with a selection of words. You plant guns, display them, and the story disappears.
Let me give you the proper official narrative.
You are putting Chris in a very tight corner.
Saranja, here is the official narrative. The prosecutor says that the Honorable Chagulanyi, he has information from the DPP that the Honorable Chagulanyi is facing charges with similar facts before a civilian court. So it would be double jeopardy to try him before two courts. If that's what you want to, you want to hear, does that set to your mind that the case before the civilian courts has the same facts, is based on the same events and everything?
With guns were found before in Chitata's house.
It is one of the,
and he's being tried in the military court martial.
No, Solomon, what I was trying to bring to the table is you have already spoken like you are for sure aware that
they found
the guns. That's why I've told you politely that in the absence, if you not allow the courts who has the legitimate power
to
examine all the claims,
yes,
and make judgment, you are going to take the role of the courts, and it could be very disastrous. Because none of us on this table were in Igulu. None of you was in the room. It will be foolhardy for you to imagine, basing on a report which you don't know how it was made, that okay, this is the position. This is what I'm saying. For us to take a neutral, a consensus brokerage route is more important. Now, let us be asking, can we see a fair trial take place? So that the judges pronounce themselves on this matter. But if you say, no, but this is here, please don't take that route.
I think that's very important. It's been very worrying watching the coverage of this whole, the aspect of the guns. Yeah. And the media were taking literally what government is saying. Oh, Bobi Wine was found with guns. And these were written, you know.
Yeah, but that's the naivety that we've been condemning.
Yeah, yes.
So the media is not asking the right questions.
So not only asking the right questions, but to know its role, that your job is not to rubber stamp and pass what the government says. Your job is to say, this is what the government claims. They are claims.
So are we shifting from fake news to fake evidence?
It's not
as you conclude, we need to go for a break.
You see, Solomon, that's the point I began. It is not only holding government to account, holding all public actors to account.
Yes.
That is when we shall have. Otherwise, we will replace one group with another.
And they take over.
The way we are talking, that all the bad group of Ugandans are in government, and all the good ones are outside the government, which may be wrong.
Which
is
wrong.
Let us hold everyone to account. Because if we make the citizens believe the bad ones are in government, the good ones
the stone throwers
are outside, what will you...
I think that's important, because at first the problem was Amin. After Amin, the problem became Obote. After Obote, the problem became the military junta. After the junta, it became Obote too. After Obote, it became Binaisa. And now the problem is...
So I don't want to use Solomon to record history of this country that perpetuates cyclic method of addressing our issues. What I require, Solomon, let's intensify the debate. Let's intensify the discussion. After all, democracy is a discussion. In that debate, we assume there will be a convergence of interests. That convergence of interest can arise when we recognize, one, that there will always be differences. Whether in a home, whether in politics, even in the political party itself. Then how do we show maturity? We show maturity when we know that, yes, the differences exist, but let everybody know that that which is different may not necessarily be dangerous.
Let's continue.
So if you think everything different from you is dangerous,
that's the trouble.
You are going to get a problem.
All right, Chris, let me come back to you. You're watching NBS Media Roundtable here at the Political Command Center. We take a very short break, but we shall get much more. Stay with us. stories, ladies and gentlemen, was the ad hoc committee that was established by Parliament to look into the arrest and the detention of members of Parliament. And of course, the Speaker of the Deputy Speaker, Jacob Olanya, paid a visit to Bobi Wine, but also he paid a visit to the Michiana legislator, Zake, and he made different comments. And of course, you'd see a man who was broken a bit when he was speaking to the media, and you, I think, for a second, I looked at Olanya speaking. I said, okay, now I think you're speaking real from the real experience that you saw in the hospital. Unfortunately, yesterday, members of Parliament were very angry and calling him to apologize to the House for giving divergent reports. What he said when he got out of hospital and what he said when he was in the chair there.
What did he say exactly in the chair?
He actually was saying that there's some sort of improvement. And then he said that he was in pain, that Zake was in pain, and then he came to the House like there was some sort of improvement. So the legislators were very disturbed at Olanya giving diverging statements. But that was just it. You've been following the ad hoc committee and the divisions there. What do you make of what's happening?
If I could start with Olanya, I was very disappointed. The person of the Speaker doesn't go to commiserate. The person of the Speaker,
he's human,
would hold or would give a big statement. In my opinion,
on a matter before court.
Hold on. In my opinion, and this is my opinion, these are prisoners of conscience. If outside, while giving the sound bite, Olanya came out and said, a mere by-election cannot bring us to this extent. Trying to create all sorts of words, a mountain of words. Declare, make a statement. But still, talking about the ad hoc committee.
What did you want him to say?
These are prisoners of conscience. This is a political dispute.
A matter before a court of law.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
But it's just
if he came out and expressed his opinion, saying a by-election cannot really cause all this, that means he's equally bringing out his opinion. Weak. A very weak opinion. Talking about the ad hoc committee, again, it's speaking to the arbitrariness that is typical of the legislature. When an event occurs, there will be a committee to manage a funeral. There will be a committee to... we have a committee on human rights. This is a human rights question.
Jova Kamateka, is it the one?
Yes, Jovia Kamateka. There is a committee on human rights that is mandated to do certain things, that is mandated to speak out. And to my surprise, I actually found it very comical that when they returned, at the time of presentation of the report, the chairperson of the committee was saying, no, there were additions and omissions. I don't know how they came about. The confusion alone would speak to the fact that they actually didn't know the terms of reference on what they were meant to do, and they could not speak out strongly on certain things. This is a case, this is a matter that requires someone with a spine to say the country is in a crisis.
Chigundu.
I don't think I'll differ greatly from what Maisini Angela has said. But of course, for me, looking at that episode in Parliament where you have the Honorable Segonas, the Alan Sewanyanas, then the chairperson of the committee, it's kind of exchanging about the content, unsure. The chairperson was saying that I think I instructed the clerk to add certain things, to include certain things. But when I looked at the report, the one I have on the iPad, those things were not put there, and some things have been added which I didn't. You get it? It portrayed Parliament MPs in disarray. And also, but also what was worrying that even this issue was politicized, which was supposed to be a straightforward thing. Go to Guru, go wherever these legislators are.
Find.
Yes, what condition they... but you could see even there was an attempt to try to infuse politics, even in something like this, something about them. But also, maybe Chris will help us answer this. What is the role of the Parliamentary Commission? what is the role in situations like this? What do the parliamentary commissioners do? Because I thought they're supposed to offer leadership, they're supposed to give guidance.
And Alex, to that question,
especially in matters that
who sent Anita Among?
Especially in matters that concern their legislators. Yes.
All right. Chris has noted that down. Joseph, your views. Your views
two things. I think if there's anything that I've been thinking about, it's the Deputy Speaker's statements outside Ruvaga Hospital. He spoke as Jacob Olanya. And you know, the restrictions and the confinements of the chair of the Speaker can be tough, because you are communicating the position of Parliament, which if there's a decision by Parliament to condemn the treatment of MPs, it comes from the Commission. It doesn't just, Olanya just doesn't wake up and sit. But I picked a few things. He says there's enough space for all of us in this country to express our views. And I thought that was fundamental, coming from someone in his position. And he raises the question of the increasing level of violence, which I thought is the gist of the matter. Why are elections becoming so violent? Why is a mere parliamentary seat becoming a matter of life and death? And I thought the country needed to examine those statements more. Chris and I talk a lot when things about Parliament, both on record and off the record. And Chris, I think a lot of us are asking questions about the Parliamentary Commission, especially in the 10th Parliament. I covered a very formidable commission chaired by the Speaker, Rebecca Kadaga. It had the Honorable Emmanuel Dombo, it had Dr. Chris Baryomunsi, it had Elijah Cooper, and it had Jalia Bintu. And I think that was one of the commissions that really rose to the occasion, and you would see, I still recall going to Parliament at 9 p.m. to cover Dr. Chris Baryomunsi. He was evading arrest, and he slept in his office during the Nevanda saga. Dr. Samuel Omoki, Emmanuel Dombo, and Dr. Chris Baryomunsi slept at Parliament. I shared half the night with them. I wanted to tell the story of these MPs who have gone beyond. And yesterday I was listening to Dr. Baryomunsi talk about the situation of his colleagues, and I was smiling because I went to YouTube quickly and pulled my story and to screaming MPs spend the night in Parliament to evade arrest. Things have since changed. Dr. Baryomunsi, that Baryomunsi wouldn't have been safe in Parliament. Now the military can pick you from Parliament.
It didn't matter.
Today. Today, without the knowledge of the Speaker, special forces will pick you in Parliament. And that is, I think, a fundamental question of privilege and of the welfare of MPs, that the Parliamentary Commission, Chris has proximity to some of these people. He will whisper. I know he doesn't make the decision. He's a public servant, but that's what worries me. Two, confusion in parliamentary committees. You see, when you have a confused nation and a confused politics, which Chris was talking about, these MPs are products of the confusion. I sat at the burial of the Honorable Ibrahim Abiriga. A parliamentary commissioner stood up and said, Mr. President, we know the people have been threatening us. I think we should not deal with kid gloves with them. They have been threatening us on social media. They are our colleagues in the opposition. A parliamentary commissioner is asking the president not even to follow due process, but to pick his colleague MPs. And that's when I realized...
He appreciates where power lies.
Yes, you see. Yeah. So why is he on the commission in the first place? The cardinal role of the commission, I think, is the welfare of members of parliament. And so how we have graduated from the Dr. Baryomunsi, Emmanuel Dombo, Elijah Cooper commission that would stand for members, to commissioners now calling for the arrest of MPs. I think parliament, and you see, I agree with Chris on one thing, that we can talk about anything, but the day we stampede parliament and destroy its ability to protect civil liberties, next we'll be talking about a military takeover.
Well, in my opinion, the parliament is already weakened, and as a people we have to try as much as possible to hang on to whatever is left of it, because it's not weakened by the people, it's weakened from the executive. And I think that in times of such grave human rights violations, like Simon said, I don't think that you can anymore play the center. You know, you can't, because there's the oppressor and the oppressed. You have to know, and you can no longer expect this whole